The Pokemon World Championship is in less than 2 weeks, so I'm ranking every qualified player for the tournament. Worlds is played across effectively 2 tournaments, known as Day 1 and Day 2. Day 1 is the largest pool of players by far, and everyone who reaches 7 wins within 9 Swiss rounds moves on to Day 2 of the tournament. Top-ranked players from championship points earned throughout the season get floated on to Day 2, where they and the people that made it through Day 1 battle for 7 rounds. Players who lose 2 or less sets during this time move on to a single elimination bracket of about 20 to 30 people usually to determine the world champion. I'm tiering players not necessarily on their skill, but how well I expect them to do in this particular Worlds format. I'm a 4 times world competitor myself, and I've collectively gone 12-1 over the last 2 times I competed in Day 1, beating players like Wolfie, Gabriel Agati, and Zine, so I think I know my stuff. Just so you know, I'm not making this list to fluff anyone up. I'm going to start here. Let's start with Justin Tang. So Justin Tang is the breakout player of the year in my opinion. He has 2 regionals wins. He won his third ever regional that he attended. Incredible first season, and I'm going to be ranking Justin in the C tier. Next, Arash Omadi. So Arash, the 2013 world champion, he has multiple times in the world top cut. 2018 comes to mind as a really impressive run, and this year I'll be placing him in the D tier. So I have D tier set aside for Day 1 players, or more bluntly, players who will drown in Day 1. I don't really expect these players to get through the gauntlet that is Day 1. It's an incredibly challenging tournament, probably the most competitive tournament all year except for Day 2 of Worlds. So unless you've consistently shown you can go deep at similar or lesser quality tournaments in terms of skill level, I have you as D. C tier is full of Day 1 survivors and floated players who got their Day 2 invites automatically from just doing well throughout the season. My expectation for these players caps at just before the cut threshold, 4-3. It's a pretty wide margin, covering everywhere from 0-7 to 4-3, just 1 win away from the top cut. I think these players could make top cut, but I think it's unlikely due to inconsistency at tournaments or low peaks throughout the year. B, I think, is a decent top cut chance. I think these players are likely to fall right on the edge of 3 losses and could cut the tournament if they're hot. A, I think these players are easily capable of getting into cut and are starting to touch on the edge of being world champion contenders. S tier, I think these players are some of the most likely to have deep runs in the cut and potentially win the event, and frankly, I'd be a little surprised if they didn't even make top cut. And lastly, we have SS tier, which is basically these players are the elite, cream of the crop. They've proven themselves in this and probably previous seasons, and I really think they're favorites to win the event overall. Now, I'm making these rankings based off of a few factors, namely results at this and previous seasons rank really highly. What ranks most highly is a focus on international finishes as well as previous world finishes and early format success, since Worlds is going to be the first event of the Regulation D rule set, so I think being able to find success early in formats holds a lot of weight. That being said, let's get back to the people I ranked initially. Justin Tang. So 2 championships, a top 8 and a top 16 at regionals. Obviously these are incredible accomplishments, but towards the end of the season he ended with a top 64 at regionals and 6-3 at North American internationals. Against some of the international talent he's going to have to beat at Worlds to get out of Day 1. So Day 1 Worlds is full of international talent, particularly from Japan this year since it's their home event. So I think proven success against talent outside of your region is pivotal in both getting out of Day 1 and succeeding in Day 2. That all being said, Justin's ability to adapt to unfamiliar situations has really impressed me this season in the games I've watched of him on stream. I do expect him to clear Day 1, make it into Day 2, which is a huge accomplishment in its own right for the first season. But I'm a little more unsure of the Day 2 prospects, just based on the last 2 events, how his season has closed out. Arash, being the 2013 world champion, I think this format really might play to his strengths with some old favorites coming back, but he's had a pretty lackluster year so far, a lot of 6-3s. I don't think he's made Day 2 at a tournament he's attended, and honestly I don't think that changes at the most stacked tournament of the year, so I'm putting him in the D tier despite the latent skill I know he has. It's just hasn't really come together this year. A few things before going on. I'm only ranking folks who I can somewhat recognize from the player pool, which roughly halves the field from around 385-ish to 200 players, so forgive me if I skim over some players in lower tiers or cover players who aren't going to the event or anything like that. Next, and I think this is probably the most important thing, if my evaluation of anyone on this list skill at the game isn't super complimentary, it's not meant to be a slight on them as a person. I'm just trying to be honest about my opinion of how they've done, how their results represent them. If you take it as an insult, Totally understand, I've been there myself, but I think it's really important to work towards separating your own self-image from what other people's perception of your skill is. It'll do a lot of good for your mental health. It'll help with tournament pressure. It's just a really important lesson to learn. So if you think that I underranked you or I didn't recognize you and put you on the list, please don't take it as an insult. Take it as a challenge to try and prove me wrong and really show up at the World Championships this year and put on a performance for us. With all that being said, let's get into it. Now, forgive me if I'm looking on this other monitor. That's where I'm going to be pulling the names from and also just looking at notes on their finishes. So yeah, we'll start with Mondo, American player. He had a good finish this year overall, but was a little inconsistent, so I'm going to be putting him in the D tier. And next is Sonoru. Sonoru got top 16 at Nationals in 2022, as well as in 2023. I think in 2022 they did it with 5 Pokemon. Yeah, I think really good potential for a cut here from Sonoru, or rather getting through day 1. Will Shao, I think he had a pretty inconsistent year at regionals, so I'm going to be going with D tier. Ding, top 8 at back-to-back regionals, but he did have 2 top 64s at regionals, and more qualitatively, I wasn't particularly impressed with the play on stream, particularly in the finals against Joe. Could be nerves, but yeah, I'm going to play it pretty conservatively here and say D tier. Kanade or Kanade, I'm going to go with B tier here. First B tier, they have automatic day 2 invite because they got top 4 at Japan Nationals. And honestly, I think starting with home field advantage here is pretty important. They have experience beating Japanese players, which I expect to be a pretty large portion of the day 2 field, getting through day 1. So I think that's really valuable. So I'm going to give them a decent chance to cut here. George Tifferman, honestly, I had trouble finding a lot of his results here, so I could be under indexing, but I don't really see going past day 1. Next, I have Brendan Zheng, personal favorite of mine, Babytron, Aaron Zheng's little brother, as well as a 2018 top 16 cut in the Masters division and a junior world champion. He works pretty often with Aaron Zheng and Wolf in practicing and building, so I think that lends a lot credibility to him having a pretty good run. He did have 2 top 16s at tournaments he went to this year, so he's overall been pretty consistent, and I got faith in B Zheng, so I'm going to go with C tier here, getting through day 1. Zack Thornberg. So Zack has done really incredibly well this season. He's auto day 2. I think he got 7th or 6th in championship points for North America. He had 3 top 8s this season at regionals, 2 top 16s at internationals, and I do think he struggles a bit in newer formats, so I'm going to be going with B tier over A, which I think his results probably merit. Going to be putting him in B tier here. Lori Halonen. So Lori, I couldn't find a lot of results, but they were really good at Trick Room in 2022. But honestly, I expect Trick Room to be really targeted hard at this tournament just because Ursaluna is such a threat this meta, so I don't think any hard Trick Room is going to do that well. I'll be going with D tier for Lori. I have Strider, Marcus Dion. He's been pretty inconsistent at regionals, even though he had some decent finishes, so I'm going to go with D tier. Freezai, popular singles YouTuber, has done really well for himself, I think, at IRL tournaments in VGC, but has been a little inconsistent. I think he had a 9-0 start at one regional, but still ended up only getting top 32. And he nearly whiffed Worlds at NAIC, so I'm going to be going with D tier for that. Next, Marcofiero, Marco Silva. He's first in European Championship points. He's been extremely consistent at his finishes in Europe. He got top 8 at North American Internationals and just won a 575-person tournament in Regulation D. I think he could be a fringe favorite to win the tournament, but I think he's kind of missing on those IRL peaks. He's had extreme consistency, and I guess you could consider top 8 North American Internationals a peak, but I think, yeah, I'm really more looking for tournament wins in this SS tier, so I'm going to have him as a fringe favorite, but more S. I really do expect him to cut and go deep. Okay, Kamikasa. So this is Maurice Uteg, German player. They got top 4 at a regional, but has been really inconsistent at regionals outside of that, so I'll go with D. Next, Joaquin Salerno, goes by Waco here as the username. I'm going to put Waco at B tier. So you might not know this player, but they're starting in day 2 from Latin America. Of the 3 tournaments I saw that they went to, they won 2 regionals and top 4 the other they went to in LATAM. It's hard to judge his ability to perform against more consistently strong competition. So I'm putting him at a B, but he could have a pretty huge upside, or, might not be able to survive in day 2. It's hard to tell, but I mean, he did all he could this season, right? He won 2 of the 3 tournaments he attended, top 4 the others, so I think B is a pretty safe rank here. Aaron Brock. Aaron got top 4 at San Diego, so he's good early format, but was otherwise inconsistent throughout the year, so I'll go with D tier. Ashton Cox. So Ashton was finalist and he got top 4 at another regional. He should have gotten top 8 at another, but honestly, he kind of got fissured out by one of my friends. So he also got top 32 at North American Internationals. He had 1 poor regional and he usually struggles at Worlds, but I honestly think he's due this season. He's been having a great season, play's been excellent, results have matched, so I'm gonna go B tier, decent chance to cut. After Ashton, we have Raxhen, who is a Spanish player who has kind of had inconsistent regional finishes. Just got second place at a large grassroots tournament, losing to Eric Rios in finals. I think despite that, the regionals finishes kind of put it at a D for me. Pocha, this is Jonathan Quinones, also kind of inconsistent at regionals, so D tier there. Now we have Feis, who is a German player who got top 4 and top 8 at 2 regionals. I think overall a really solid player. I think if the attendance was more there, he'd be in day 2 automatically. Just didn't attend too many tournaments there this year, so I'll be going with, C tier rather. I think he'll make it through day 1. Hard to say outside of that. Enrique Grimaldo. He had lots of day 2s, but was honestly struggling to get deeper than top 32. So I'm going to be putting him at a D tier here. Il Bona. So this is Leonardo Bononami, an Italian player who's starting in day 2. He cut Worlds in 2022, but he got top 32 at European Internationals this year. Consistently really good finishes at regionals. I think he's probably borderline of C and B, but I don't know. I feel like he has a lot of potential. He's been flying under the radar, and I am going to put him at B. Alexis, who I believe is a popular Italian YouTuber as well, Francesco Pardini. He has great regional finishes this season. He went 4-3 in day 2 and got through day 1 in Worlds 2022. He's starting in day 1, and frankly, I expect him to clear through day 1 again, and he could go deeper. C tier, clear day 1. I think he could go deeper, but I think conservatively I'll go with a C tier. Now we have PPL Dorian Quinones did really well at your North American Internationals. He'll be starting in day 2 from the Latin American region. He got top 8 at 2017 Worlds with overall good regional finishes this year. I think he's probably borderline C and B, but without a lot of data points internationally, I'm going to go with a C tier. Viva Vlade is Alistair Sandover, starting from day 2 from the Australian region. He got second and top 8 at regionals in Australia, but he's really lacking in those international finishes, so I can't really put him much higher than C tier. Len VGC, Alex Soto. Yeah, he's kind of the trick room guy this year, and he's a 2-time regional finalist early in the season, but the results they've pretty much fallen off after that. I think Trick Room is going to get especially targeted this tournament, as I said earlier, so I'm going to go with D tier. I think Trick Room's just going to get so targeted even in day 1 that it's not going to make it out. So Liakos, who I believe is a Greek player, the only event he went to was European Internationals and he got top 8 at that tournament. If he goes to Worlds, I think he could be a pretty big threat. And I think he'd probably make it out of day 1. I'm not sure if he is going, but I'm going to go with Liakos in C tier. Z, Leola, middling regional performances overall, but could see a hot tournament. But I really think the baseline here is D. I think there was a lot of, top 64 or top 32s at tournaments, so not really the peak I think we need to see to be confident that they'll make it out of day 1. Eternal Snowman, Andrew Zheng. He got top 32 at NAIC. I couldn't see much in terms of performances. Andrew Zheng, without a lot of data points, I think it's safer to put him at D tier. Brian Youm, who was able to win a regional championship this year. He was honestly one of the more consistent players in 2018 and 2019 before he stopped playing. I'm going to be going with the B tier here. I think he excels more at more developed formats, quite frankly. I think he's a really strong player, but more later in formats, and he struggled with some out-of-game factors before, but I think if he's in good shape and really well practiced, he has a good chance to cut, so I'm going to put him in B tier. So I have Mattie Moo, Matty Morgan. He has auto day 2, and I believe he went 8-0 in day 2 of the one regional that he did win this season. He didn't go to a lot of events, but got top 16 at European Internationals as well. And he also went 6-1 in last year's World Championship to make it into day 2 through day 1, so I think he's probably borderline A, but I'm going to be going with the B tier. just because the regional that he won, he did kind of luck in on 6-3, just bubbling in based off it being a bit of a smaller tournament. But yeah, the 8-0 dominance afterwards just kind of makes me think that there might be a problem in beating less experienced players, might be a reliance on reads. I'm not quite sure. But yeah, that I think overall he's really consistent, and at least B is super fair, and he honestly is fringe A, so keep that in mind. China Sapphire, or StarSapphire, I think they also go by. Pan Si Ming, a player who's starting in day 2. They won the Global Challenge, the first online GC that we had, so they had success beating some offbeat Japanese strategies that most of the Western players aren't really used to playing against, and also had some international success. I think they got top 16 at North American International Championships this year. So I think overall, just really excellent season. I like their chances in day 2. They're already in there, so I'm going to be giving them a B tier. Next, Gavin Michaels. So this is a big fish, okay? He's auto day 2 from championship points in North America. He's the Oceania International Champion, and he's been really consistent at regionals. Not only that, he's been kind of married to Rain all year, just as a team concept, so he has a lot of experience on that composition. And with Basket Legion, Thunderous T, some new additions, all the Genie's moves being 100% accurate in Rain gives him some new Rain abusers to play with. Basket Legion, kind of just way better than Azumarill and Palafin, just immediate pressure on the field. So I think being married to Rain means he's going to be more experienced with that sort of composition. From the start, he'll have been practicing it from day 1 of the format, whereas other players have kind of been trying to figure out which team works for them. So honestly, I'm going to be putting Gavin in the S tier. Yeah, I think if maybe some better performances at the other internationals. I think he only got top 32 at North American internationals. If not for that, he'd probably be SS for me, but S, I think, yeah, I fully expect him to cut and go deep this event, honestly. Next, I have Yashuharu and Yuma, both senior players. I don't know much about them outside of that, so unfortunately I'm going to be ranking them together, but both world champion and top 4 at the world championship in 2022 when they were seniors, both aged up, and are now masters playing. They're going to be playing in masters. They'll both be in day 1, so I think I'm going to be putting them in the C tier. It's kind of close, but they have experience beating Japanese players before. Granted, it's in a lower age group, but I still think that experience in their region is going to serve them well, and it's no joke winning the world championship or getting top 4 in any division. So yeah, I'll go with C for them. Redsilver, Hippolyte Bernard. I got top 16 at Worlds 22, but honestly this season the format hasn't been too kind to him with no Kyogre Shedinja. It feels a little like the results haven't kept up, so I'm going to go D tier. Now we have Wente, Matt Maynard. I think UK player, but has been lacking in big finishes this season, so I'll go D tier. Now we have Zomog, Ryan Haig. He got second at Hartford. Personally, I kind of attribute this to a really good team call. He kind of stole Gavin's team the tournament before he was going to bring it. And he didn't really do as well after, so unless he kind of repeats that formula and gets in with a good team building group who feeds him a strong team, I'm going to go with D tier. Tiki Chase, player from my region, has some decent finishes at regional, top 32, but hasn't really had the peaks I think necessary to call him making day 2. Now Sohaib Mufti, he's been extremely consistent through every format in every tournament structure. I guess not really Series A, didn't do quite as well in that, but Series B and Series C did incredibly. So I think, yeah, especially at international events, he's done well. He got 2 top 16s just bubbling out of top cut at those events. So proven ability to beat international talent. I think this is pretty safely going to be B, even though he is, I think, he might be in day 1. I'm not sure if he's day 1 or day 2, but regardless, I think he has a decent cut chance. Paul Chua, yeah, I'm going to be putting Paul in S tier pretty handily. I got top 4 at Worlds in 2022 through auto invite. He has day 1, but despite that, he played out of his mind this tournament, won the European International, and now has auto day 2. He's really been historically strong at Worlds. He also has a 2018 cut to his name, and I think just qualitatively one of the best positional players I've ever seen play the game, so I'd be quite surprised if he didn't cut, and I could see him going deep. Next, we have James Baek, just another really strong player. So I ordered this list. I put all the names that I recognize through a random number generator. excuse me, and it just spit out these names. So interesting that it popped out James Baek and Paul Chua, the two world's top 4 members back to back. But contrast to Paul's S, I'm going to be putting James in B tier. So James got top 4 at Worlds 2019 and 2022, which is unheard of level of consistency. The only player who I can think of who has done better is Paul Ruiz, 2017, top 4 to world champion. It's really uncommon to do something at the highest level like that. So regardless, he's had a pretty mediocre season for how good we know he is. Despite that, I think he's got a good finish in him here and could clear day 1 and, come out with a really strong team, play it to the best of his ability, and has a decent chance to cut if he does that. Kortex, so Nathan Ortiz, he has some okay regional finishes, but he kind of feels married to pretty gimmicky Oranguru Trick Room teams right now, so I'm gonna put him at D tier. Like I said, I think Trick Room's gonna be targeted, and unless he comes up with some creative solutions, which he might be capable of, to get around that, I'm gonna go D tier. Trainer Roberto Parente. So he has a top 16 regional finish this year, as well as he got top 16 at Worlds in 2022 with a really offensive Tailwind team. I think this format has the potential to reward hyper offensive Tailwind teams. So I do expect him to, I believe he is in day 1. I expect him to get through that and honestly could cut. I think he's a really talented hyper offensive pilot with Tailwind. So yeah, I think he has a decent cut chance despite being in day 1. Next is Animus, Kyle Livinghouse, an American player. At regionals, he's had really high highs and kind of low lows. He has a top 8, a couple top 16s, but a lot of finishes like top 64-ish and worse. So I think, this season hasn't been the best for him, but he's been practicing a lot in online tours, and he's someone whose skill I respect pretty highly. So I think I'm going to put him in the C tier. Next, we have Torviv, Victor Medina, I believe. So he has auto day 2 through just really good finishes throughout the year. He actually cut all 6 events he attended this year, if I'm looking at that correctly. He ended on top 4 at North American Internationals, so really impressive finish there. International talent, really kind of meeting all the criteria. He got top 4 at European Internationals in 2022. Despite that, he didn't make it through day 1 in 2022, but he was a really strong Tailwind and Weather player in 2022. Both of these strategies I think are quite strong, well positioned for this tournament, so I expect he's going to be comfortable with many of the new Pokemon coming in this regulation. So if not for the poor Worlds in 2022, I think he could be a sleeper favorite to win the event, honestly, with all his consistency. But without that proof, I'm going to keep him on probably the lower end of S tier. By the way, these aren't ordered, so if I'm just saying lower end, that's just kind of a mental note. Yeah, like these aren't ordered by any means. It's going to be pretty difficult to do that anyways. Yeah, moving on, we have Lev Wiley, really old school player. Moving on, yeah, now we have Lev Wiley just coming back to the game after a long hiatus. I was able to get top 8 at regionals, which is pretty impressive, but I didn't really see much else outside of that. I think he was able to kind of chip away at his invite with PCs and other regional finishes. Didn't see an international finish to get data from, so I'm going to be conservative and say D here. Andrew Ding. So Valentine, VGC, I think. He had a really hot 2022, but has kind of struggled in the non-Dynamax conditions of this year. I'll go with D tier, and Riley Factura is next, known as Gengarboi to some of the older school players, but he's been very consistent in American regionals, like really, really consistent. I kind of was flying under the radar until that top 4 at the tournament that Brian Youm won, I believe, but unfortunately he had kind of a poor NAIC. Despite that, I think the regional finishes kind of speak for themselves, and he's done historically okay at Worlds, so it's hard to say he'll have a decent chance to cut, but I think C is pretty safe for him. He's a really strong player. So Xiliang Tang, so Tissel Tang got regional champion, has kind of inconsistent regionals outside of that. Top 64 at Nat, so I believe was able to day 2, but wasn't able to go, I don't think positive, maybe just barely, but wasn't able to excel. So I think probably going to be able to clear day 1, but outside of that, hard to say. Next is Sempra Dula, notable just like Justin Tang for being one of the only players to win their first regional in the modern era. I expect him to get out of day 1, but I'm unsure of how he'll fare in day 2, so I'm going to go with this. World is just such a minefield in day 2 that I think it's hard to give confidence to anyone in their first tournament for me to do well. So they could, but again, I'm not gonna bet on it. So Polar Bear, Giovanni, player from my region. I think he's had really good finishes scattered throughout the year, most prominently at San Diego, so we know he does have early format success. I think that bodes well for his early format, prowess, so I'm going to go with C tier here. I'm not sure if he'll be able to convert it into day 2 because he wasn't quite as consistent as he was early season. So Wayne Yu, he has auto invite through the Hong Kong National Championship. I don't know much else about this player, which is kind of going to be the trend with a lot of the East Asian national champions. Without a lot of data to go on, obviously they're already in day 2, so they go in C tier by, that's the minimum. But without knowing much about them, it's hard to say they'll do better than 4-3. Unfortunately, I wasn't able to catch their battles, so yeah. C for Wayne Yu, kind of going not quite contrary against that. We have Shaman, who is the 2022 and 2023 Singapore national champion. He has auto day 2 from winning that championships and has actually a lot of data on him internationally. He competed a lot in 2018, 2019, and he struggled in the last Worlds, but he got top 16 at 2018 Worlds, and throughout that season he had incredibly consistent cuts at internationals, was probably the strongest player internationally on a consistency basis. So yeah, I think Shaman's a really strong player. Melvin K, I am going to go with a A tier, finally filling out that list. Nora Bowman, yeah, several decent finishes throughout the season, but not really the peaks I'm looking for to be confident they'll get through day 1. Next, Alberto Lara, 8-4-10 in making day 2 of events he attended in 2023. In addition, he finds his groove on what team works for him really quickly in a format and just sticks to it, which I think, as I kind of mentioned for Gavin, is an advantage in the first event of a format. So he has auto day 2, and I am going to put him just above the minimum for that. I think he has a pretty good cut chance based on his ability to pick out teams that fit him very early on in a format's life. So yeah. Gazoni, Calvin Nissen, been kind of inconsistent at regionals, so I'll go with a D tier. Bartosz Eckert has several decent finishes at regionals, but not really the top international peaks I would want to see to be able to rank them in C tier. So I will, oops, that is not quite right. That is not the Nauchiak tier, that is C tier. So I'm going to go with D tier here. Nicholas Kahn, who is the Australian 2017 Juniors World Champion. He got top 8 at a regional in Masters this year, so definitely acclimating to Masters okay, but I couldn't really see super prominent international results. So without a lot of data of success in the Masters division internationally, I'm going to go with a D tier here. River Dace, strong old player, but yeah, inconsistent regional results this season, so D tier. Chosen Future, he had some decent results this season at regionals. I think maybe it was a top 4 and a top 32. I'm not seeing that, but yeah, these results were only on Australia. I didn't quite see an international finish. I assume he went to OCIC, but maybe didn't do well enough for it to be reported. I'm without having a big international finish this season, it's hard to say. I'm going to go with D tier. All right, so apologies that some of the aspects on the screen might have changed. There was a big crash on my computer. Not sure what happened, but we are back. So I had to reorient how some of the screen was set up. We're going to start again with Yotam. So I'm going to be putting Yotam in C tier. I think he's done consistently very well at regionals, gotten day 2 at pretty much everyone he's attended. I think he has a good chance to make day 2 from day 1, but I might be a little biased towards him. But yeah, I think if he's in the groove, he could do well, but I will admit he has struggled in day 2s in the past to put up big numbers. So I think this is probably fringe C and D, but I'm going to go gut and say C here, while still recognizing there's some degree of bias towards that. All right, next we have Koturi, who got solid finishes throughout the season, but really didn't have the standouts, I think, necessarily to get to C tier. Joshua Lorsi, a really strong player, old school as well. So I definitely know a lot about him, but he's went 4-6 on day 2s this season. I think he might be really well positioned. I think the results in day 2 aren't quite there. There's been some inconsistency. One of the tournaments he wasn't able to cut was EUIC, which is an international tournament, obviously, which is going to be a lot of the players he's playing. But I think I'll go D, but I'm not really so sure. I wouldn't think he'd be flying out if he wasn't, I don't think he'd fly if he were messing around. So I think this easily could be a C, but I'm going to go with D there. So Joan Perello, we have day 2 from championship points automatically. He had a hot EUIC, but otherwise struggled a bit in the season, so I'll be going with C tier. Next, we have Axior, Aurelian Sulo. 6 out of 7 tournaments he went to, he got day 2, so that's really impressive consistency. He did really well at regionals, but seemed to weaken as the season went on. With that in mind, I think I'll go C. Just the tournament results kind of waning as time went on is kind of an issue, so yeah. Hobbit, Henry Rich, just fell out of the TA day 2 range for Australia or Oceania. He got top 16 at North American Internationals, just missing day 2, but he wasn't really performing in Australia as far as I know. This could have been because he was commentating events, I'm not quite sure, but yeah, I kind of expect him to get through day 2 just based off of skill and his performance at NAIC, and yeah, I'm going to go with C here because I'm not sure how well he'll do after that. This one's going to hurt me. Justin Burns, Sporific. I'm going to be putting him in D tier. He's a really incredible player throughout the years, really excellent veteran player, but he had an excellent 2022, getting a lot of high finishes at tournaments, but even then struggled in day 1, and he's had a pretty poor 2023, so I think given that he couldn't make it happen in 2022, I think the odds here are kind of against him, so I'll go with D, even though it pains me. Calvinix, who is Calvin Foster, he got top 8 at Worlds 2022, but has otherwise struggled in 2023, which is what I'm going to weight a little more highly here. I think he does have a big upside, could make day 2 through day 1, but I think given the poor performances in 2023 formats, I'm going to go with D tier. Next, Collin Heier. I'll freely admit I'm biased here. He's been a good friend of mine for a long time, but I'm going to be putting him in B tier. And I think it's pretty well deserved. He could be borderline A because he got top 8 at EUIC and OCIC. He got top 32 at NAIC. Really has showed out at international tournaments, proven that he's able to beat international talent on a consistent basis. He also has a lot of really good regionals finishes, even though he hasn't had the peaks he's had in other seasons. He's a multiple-time regional championship winner in the past. He has really great building and practice partners behind him. I think he might be borderline A, but I'm going to put him in B here. I think that's pretty safe, and yeah, decent cut chance for Collin here. Next, I have Bide Violist, a Japanese player who got auto day 2 from getting top 8 at Japanese nationals. Otherwise, I don't really know a lot about them though, so I'm going to go with a C. Hard to make a call. Mike D'Angelo, he's had some weak regional finishes overall this season, so even though I know he was pretty strong, pretty good Colossal player back in the day, in the Dynamax era, I'm going to go with that. Kyle Ayala, I think, had pretty weak regionals finishes outside of a top cut at the Columbia special event, but yeah, I'm going to go D just because not a lot of international experience. Next, I'm going to go over Edu. He's the reigning 2022 world champion looking to defend. He had an auto day 1 invite, and he only went to 1 regional this season, given that he got top 16 there, so I think I do expect him to be in shape, but with limited data points, it's hard to qualify what he's going to get. Qualitatively though, Edu is probably, like Paul, one of the best positional players I've ever seen. Just holistically amazing player by all means. So I think even though he's in day 1, even though we don't have a high peak finish this season, just a top 16 showing at an event, a regional, I think it'd be hard to put him anywhere lower than A. He's motivated to defend. He's one of the best players ever in my opinion, and I'm going to go with A. Toller Webb, another former world champion, this time in the seniors division, as well as a former US national champion in 2015. I think he's had decent regionals so far, but a poor North American international. He got a top 8 at 1 regional, but I think I do have faith in him and his practice group to bounce back after that nationals finish. So I'm going to be putting Toller in C tier. I think Toller's perfectly capable of getting through day 1. Beyond that, it's hard to call. He hasn't really had that big Masters finish in day 2. So yeah, that's where I will put Toller. Fevzi. So Fevzi, old school player, really strong player overall, but has had some pretty poor regional finishes thus far in 2023. So we'll go D tier. Next, Kimo Nishimura, also a friend of mine. He's had some inconsistency at regionals, unfortunately, but he does have really strong practice in building partners, so I could see him making it out of day 1 if he's playing hot. I think he's definitely has the peaks capable of making it out of day 1, but I think he really has to be playing at that to make it out. So just conservatively baseline, I'm going to go with D tier. Yuri, I believe he's a former international champion or something close to that. He's had really good success internationally and at Worlds before. I think he cut in 2018, maybe even in 2017 as well. But I think he's had a pretty poor season regionally, so So I'm going to be going with a, D tier for Yuri. Next, I'm excited about this one, Hirofumi Kimura. He got second at Worlds 2022 with Umbreon, so capable of making creative decisions and also really intelligent decisions, not just being silly for the sake of it. He's also the 2018 and 2019 Japanese national champion, so he has experience beating Japanese players, so I'm confident that even though he's in day one, he's going to be able to get out of it. And just based on the skill, based on the team building, I'm going to put Hirofumi in A tier. Another really excellent player, Eric Rios. He has auto day 2 invite from European Championship points. In the previous 2 World Championships, he got top 8 and top 16, so really great formats at this specific tournament, as well as being extremely consistently excellent at regionals and internationals. Not even just like, okay, a top 32, whatever. Consistently making cut or getting top 16 at these tournaments, and basically not making cutoff resistance a lot of the time. So I think, it's a pretty easy S here, borderline SS, but I think he's missing like that big international win that he had the previous season. So I'm going to go S tier for Eric. Next is Fede Campo. I went 4-3 at 2022 Worlds, so really competent player. I think has kind of underperformed relative to the skill that we kind of know that he has this season. So I'm going to go with D tier. I think that's pretty conservative, maybe a little aggressive. He probably could make it out of day one, but based on the results we've seen thus far, I'm going to go with my ranking of D. Andrea Pagano, he has an okay finish at EUIC, but otherwise kind of hard to gauge things. So I'm going to go with D. Sableye, VGC. This is Ryan Lesotho. He got second place at one regional, I believe losing maybe to Joe UX9. I don't quite remember, but he's been otherwise kind of inconsistent at regionals and internats. I don't know if he went to NAIC, but inconsistent at regionals, which is I think a big issue for making that a day one. So D. Simone Sanvito. I think he just got a Palafin tattoo, which is kind of interesting. Interesting guy. He got 2017. He's the EUIC champion, top 16 Worlds in 2018. So definitely capable of high peaks. And he got second at a regional this year. He's kind of had a habit of just coming out of nowhere, playing other games like Smash. I think he was really big on Smash Bros. Ultimate for a while. And then just coming back and being like, I'm still pretty excellent at Pokemon, and getting like that second place at regional this year. I think he has a reasonably good chance of just doing that again and making it at least out of day one. So I'm going to put Simone at C. Next that's crazy they ranked it like this. So kind of a joke running in the past was that Sanvi and Chua looked alike. I don't know if that's so much the case anymore, but that was the joke circa 2017. So the RNG generator just placed them next to each other coincidentally. Swear I didn't do that myself. But Chua nearly crossed the 4th. Excellent player. I think per event, if you just broke down CP per play point, I think Chua is actually above Joe, who got first in CP. Chua on his own is second in CP overall, but I think per play point, he's actually number 1, maybe even in the world. He went 9 out of 10 on day 2s this year, and he cut 2 internationals, and he pretty much demolished Worlds day 1 last year, going undefeated, and I really expect he's going to do just as well at day 2 this year. So this time I'm going to be going with Chua in S tier. So Next, I have Certain Light, Sam Bentham. He doesn't go to many events, but in 2019 and 2022, he got top 8 at a regional, and that was the only events it looked like he went to. And this year, he got 2 top 16s at the events he went to. So I think he might be kind of an underdog, dark horse, just really impressive consistency. And I think he's probably going to convert it to day 2, getting through day 1. He has a really strong practice group behind him I'm aware of. So I think I'm going to go with C tier for Certain Light. Okay, next we have Jonathan Zuniga. He has kind of inconsistent regionals results, so I'm going to go with D tier. We have Wavy with 3 Vs, Yang Da Wei, the Taiwanese national champion, as well as Taipei regional runner-up. I haven't watched their battles, so kind of hard to judge, and so I'm going to go with C tier. Narimbo Davide Carrare. 5 out of 6 tournaments he went to, he got top 16 at EUIC, as well as getting top 8 at Worlds 2022. I think he's one of the most consistent players in the world. He's in incredibly good shape to get into the cut this tournament and have another deep run, in my opinion. So I'm going to be putting Narimbo in A tier. Another strong player, we have Marcus Stadter, extremely veteran player, one of Wolf's main building partners. He got top 4 at Worlds 2016, losing to Wolf in semifinals. And truthfully, I think if Marcus plays anyone other than Wolf in that top 4, it's them in finals. So yeah, just incredible player, incredible builder, one of the best European players of all time, and similar to Sanvi in that he can kind of just show up with almost no practice and kick everyone's butt again. So even though doesn't have the auto day 2, I'm going to be putting him in A tier. Next, we have John Hu. So John's really well known for having really creative strategies, oftentimes relying around swaying the RNG in his favor. I think he was probably the first player to use Fisher Torkoal this year. In the past, Confuse Ray Sableye, among some other things. Teeter Dance on some Pokemon back in the day. And yeah, I think he's kind of been favoring Bright Powder Articuno with Snow Cloak this year. But yeah, he's had really inconsistent regional finishes. All that being said, so I'm going to go with a D tier. Gary Kwan, similarly really creative teams, but some weak events in 2023. So D tier. Stefan Mott, he was a 2022 regional champion, Pengi. But again, kind of inconsistent at regionals here in 2023. Starting to sound like a broken record, but it is what it is. Mars, this is Marco Martinez, a Chicago player. He's 3 for 4 cut on making day 2 this year, 2 of which were top 16 performances. And this is kind of a little biased. I think Mars is extremely talented and underexposed right now. I think he's probably going to get through day 1 if he goes. Just a player that qualitatively has really impressed me. I think he does a lot of good things in his play, so I'm going to go C tier, despite maybe the results not quite telling that, but yeah, I think C tier for Mars. Julio, he has some good regional finishes. He got top 8 at UIC and top 16 at OCIC, so he has auto day 2, and he hasn't really gone quite deep at tournaments yet. Like, he doesn't have the win, but he has pretty much in striking distance of cuts at every tournament he goes to. But yeah, I think this could be a pretty big breakout tournament for him, so I think he has a decent chance to cut, and I will go with B tier. Next, we have Cobalt, a Japanese player who got in Global Challenge 2. He actually played with 2 carts, and he got second and third place with them, so he has experience beating up on Japanese players, and yeah, I think that's really going to benefit him in day 1. So I think that will get him a C tier from me. I think he's going to clear day 1 just based off of those global challenges, because a lot of Japanese players were trying to finish well in those just to qualify for the national championship. So the fact that he was able to finish that highly on not 1 but 2 carts, I think speaks for itself. Tekka, who is Juan Manuel Santizo, he got top 32 at European internationals, but otherwise had some middling regional finishes. So I'm going to go D tier. Now we have Tom H, Thomas Hayden. I think this is their first world championship, but overall not fantastic regional finishes. Definitely good enough to qualify, but not super consistent. So I'm going to go D tier. Galo Orbea has an auto day 2, but had kind of middling performances out of region to make that happen. So I'm going to go C tier. Next is Kazuya Kitasawa. He got top 8 at Japanese nationals. I couldn't find much more on that, so I'm going to play it conservative here, go C. But yeah, the auto invite, as well as just being good against Japanese players, having proven that, I think is valuable. It could be even higher. Michael Der Best, a German player. I think he's been really good at singles for a long time, Smogon player, and he's doing really well for his first season, but he's been a little inconsistent in his finishes IRL, despite being probably, I think there's like an ELO system for online tournaments, like Limitless Tours and other things like that, and his ELO is like the highest just because not only has he played the most out of almost any player I've seen, he just consistently does quite well. So yeah, I think all that practice, especially in Regulation D and Best of 3, is going to benefit Michael, and he's going to be able to clear day 1. And I'm not so sure about day 2, but day 1 for sure, I think. Next we have Leonard Kraft, De Wobblefet. He has kind of a poor regionals finish overall this season, but he had a good NAIC. Despite that, he hasn't really converted those to Worlds finishes in the past, so I'm going to be placing him in D tier. I think he's really talented though, excellent player qualitatively, but I don't think the finishes justify me putting him in C tier. Like I think he's definitely at least that caliber of player, but the finishes don't spell that out for me this season. Next we have Wanfi, who has a auto day 2 through Latin America, has some good regional finishes, but didn't really excel at UIC, so I'm going to be giving him a C. I'm not sure. 4-3 sounds fair. I'm not confident in a cut. Nils Dunlop. Just to speak on this guy, he just listing his Worlds finishes. He has top 8 in 2017, top 4 in 2018, 4-3 day 2 in 2019, and he top cut in 2022. So despite having a poor season so far, I really think he's going to bounce back hard and make day 2. I think he might even go deep. That's kind of a stretch, but I think super safe to say he'll get through, in my opinion. He's one of the most consistent Worlds players we've seen, straight up. And now I have UB Slow, who is Kaito Ari, the Japanese national champion this year. He got second place in the 3rd global challenge, so obviously has shown an ability to consistently beat his Japanese peers, which, as I've said, I think is very important in success in both day 1 and day 2. Day 1, not a problem for him, auto day 2 invite, but I think he's really on the top of his game. He's been doing consistently well in Japanese grassroots tournaments. He finished his last official tournament on a win in the championship, so I think this is going to be our first SS favorite player to win the tournament. I think he's definitely the favorite Japanese player. Just having won that national, I think, speaks a lot to his skill, and yeah, definitely SS, a favorite to win the tournament, Kaito. Next we have Nish, who is the Wan Aki, the Malaysian national champion. I didn't catch their battles, so conservatively I'll go C with that auto day 2 invite. Next we have Pro T, Renzo Navarro, a Latin American player. He has good regional finishes, but little data on him internationally, so I'm going to go with a C tier for that. Next I have Matoki Agano, who got top cut at Worlds in 2022. This season only got top 48 at Japan Nationals, so might not be in as sharp shape in 2023 as in 2022. So I do think definitely capable of making it to day 2 from day 1, but yeah, I'm going to be going C here conservatively. Okay, and next we have Justin Karras, Azazel. He got top 8, I believe, at Worlds in 2016. Hasn't had such a strong Worlds finish since, but has had the best season of his career so far. Won a regional, did top cut a couple other tournaments, but didn't have quite the strong nationals finish. Despite that, he has 2 really strong practice and team building groups, one with, I think, between them, like a couple world championships between those 2 groups. So I think, yeah, just the combination of those factors, I do think he's due for a big finish here, even though he's only in day 1. I think he's going to take the lessons he learned from a poor nationals finish and take it all the way to cut with a decent probability, so B tier. Rajan Ball, I'm going to go with D tier. I think he's a really creative team builder. I think he could come up with some gas to get him through day 1, but he's overall had a pretty inconsistent to poor regional cycle, so I'm going to go with D for Rajan here. All right, now Aaron Traylor similarly has had kind of a poor season at regionals, but is just an extremely proficient player, especially in early format. He won the first Sword and Shield regional, I believe it was, so I think he has the potential to make it through day 1 despite having a poor performance. Team building partner with Justin Karras, Wolf, Aaron Traylor, Aaron Zheng, Marcus, so I think he has the support group he needs to be able to make this happen despite having a poor regional, and I think he's really hungry for another Worlds finish after I think he was top 8 in 2016 was his last big one. I think he's hungry, I think he has the support to do it, and he has the motivation, so I'll go with C tier. And next we have Jody Azzarelli. He got second at Worlds in 2014 and then, played a little bit, but kind of took a pretty big hiatus at some point, and in his first season back, got top 4 at a regional, just cut NAIC, and has been consistently really excellent at regionals. So I think this is borderline S for me. I think, yeah, it's tough, but I think what goes against Jody here is his willingness to kind of just pick up a team really late before an event instead of having that practice beforehand. He's always on Twitter joking about, I need a team, etc. But I think the players, in this Worlds particularly, the more practice you have with the team, the better you'll be. I don't think having the call is going to be the call, if you will. So let's go. I'm going to put Jody in A, despite I think if he were more practice with the team, if I were aware of that, I'd probably put him in S. Next, we have Lexicon Alex Underhill. I think he's an amazing Trick Room player. In particular, he's an amazing Trick Room builder at building teams that beat what people try to beat Trick Room with. So, but even in his strongest formats, I think last season he was really strong, kind of similar to Justin Burns with his performances, but still wasn't able to convert it to a big Worlds finish. So I think I do think he'll get through. I think he's had the finishes this season to justify getting through day one alone, but I don't think he'll be able to get much, like I'm not confident he'll be able to get much higher. He's definitely capable, but yeah, gonna be a C tier for me. Luka Paz, I think he had a really hot start this season with that Liverpool win, but has kind of fallen off since then, so I'm gonna go with D tier for Luka. Next is Pokéraf, which is Rafael Martinez. Spanish player, but got most of his championship points from the London Open, which also notably means he did not get through day one last year. So yeah, D. Zekrom Zeke, Ezekiel Cordero. He got top 32 at NAIC recently, and he got top 16 at a regional, but otherwise has been a little consistent in their performances. I think he's a pretty creative team builder and could make it through. I think he has the skill. I think he has probably the team building to get through it, but I'm not sure that the results spell that out necessarily. All right, and now we have Gabibo. This is Aaron Zheng's nightmare fuel, swagger guy, a horror of many names. Yeah, he got second in 2013 Worlds. At 2014, he followed up with a top 8. And despite kind of not being super active, it looks like since then, just a really incredible player. He's not qualified for day one, or he's not qualified automatically for day 2, but in spite of all that, I think he's a really good, aggressive player. He's just so strong. The results kind of speak for themselves here, and he did decent at Japan Nationals, not quite what he needed to day 2, but I'm going to go with a B tier for Ryosuke. Next we have Ragna, Jordan. He has inconsistent regional results, so I'm going to put him in D tier, despite being a pretty strong player, I think. Next we have Ren Kotori. He got top 8 at Japanese Nationals. Aside from that, don't know much about them. Pro man Javier Signorina, one of the best Spanish players in 2017, but hasn't had this season, I think, to inspire confidence at Worlds. So D tier. Chino Alfredo Chang Gonzalez, one of the best young Australian players. He has an auto day 2 invite with a top 8 at OCIC, a top 32 at EUIC, but yeah, I think this is going to be ones where one of my biases kind of takes over. I think he has great international finishes, has the CP, obviously has the day 2 auto invite, but having watched the games, particularly the team selections, I think he kind of takes a lot of risks in both play and team selection. And as someone who kind of did that myself to not great effect in day 2 Worlds in the past, I'm going to go with C tier. I'm not sure if it's going to be able to, that aggression is going to be able to convert to a decent cut chance in my opinion, but I could be wrong about that, so definitely letting my biases take the wheel there. Barish Akos, he got top 4, top 8, I think it was top 8 in Worlds 2016 using Wolf and Marcus's team. He's an old school player, good finishes, but overall I think he has had kind of a weak 2023, all things considered, so I'm going to go with D tier. Is Scarlet Skill, Dylan Salvanera. He's gotten a lot of online practice, has been really successful in online tours, but I think lacks the consistency IRL to confidently say that he'll cut or make day 2. Next we have Adam, I think just outside of the top 16 range in Europe. I'm going to go with D tier. I think he had some okay regional finishes, but lacked kind of the peaks that I am looking for here. Next we have Hakusu, who got 2nd at Japan Nationals this year, 9th overall in online Japan Nationals during Mickey Mouse online COVID tournament, the tournament that was just held in absence of an actual national. He has auto day 2 and off the strength of nationals finishes alone. Like I've said, I'm going to rank that pretty highly, so I'm going to go with a B for Hakusu. Next is Enosh Shakar, who actually has cut Worlds before. He got, I think, what was it, top 4? No, it was top 8, I think, in 2013 with, what was it, Obama Snow Marowak or something like that. Yeah, really creative team builder, has been consistently building some of the cooler teams. And notably, he actually picked out Tapu Fini in 2017 before everyone figured out how good it was. So he does have quite an eye for early format, I think. But overall, I'm going to go with D tier just because I don't think the online or the IRL results kind of match the skill and team building prowess that we know that he's capable of. Wildfire, who is the auto day 2 finish for Europe, I think 16th out of 16 of the people who got it, but he kind of just squeaked in with his regionals results, so I'm going to go with a C tier. Okay, and next we have Joe UX9, Joseph Ugarte, founder of the X9 Academy. Been doing a lot of coaching, but also that hasn't taken away from his success at all. Probably one of the most consistent and impressive tournament regional cycles we've ever seen. First place, second is just unheard of. He also got top 4 at NAIC this season and last season, and he cut Worlds in 2022. So if the previous season is any pattern, we can kind of see him cutting. I think he could be S tier, but I'm going to put him in A tier just because a lot of his best results kind of seem tied to the strength of Sun, or how good of a Sun team has already been developed. And I think Sun could be really strong in this format, but I think the later a format goes, the better Joe gets. So I think just based on it being early format, I'm going to put him at A. I still think he's a strong contender to cut and do well in the tournament, but not quite S just because I think he's a later format guy for the most part. Now we have Ben Fox, Andrea Olea, strong player. I think really a lot of London Open CP is kind of swaying me towards D tier. Hasn't proven in the 2023 season. Now Gabriel Agati, okay, yeah, excellent season. Probably should have won OCIC if like a Pollen Puff crit didn't hit his Palafin, but regardless, he went 4-3 at Worlds in 2022. He's had some inconsistency in tournaments after that second place finish, but I think he's still an A. I think really excellent player, proven himself this season, and a little bit of inconsistency is, it's kind of made up for by the extreme peaks this guy has. Next, we have Emilio Forbes, kind of similar boat. First place, top 8 are his regionals finishes this year. Really consistent. In 2018, he was the world's finalist. In 2019, he went 4-3. He had a poor NAIC, but honestly, the peaks are just so high. I think even coming in through day one, I expect him to clear that and make it, into cut pretty consistently. Now we have Giovanni Costa. He has a cut in 2016 at Worlds, so he's done it before, but he's also a local Dragonite connoisseur. I'm sure you've seen that graphic and video being played before. I think he'll make it through day one, but I think the targeting of Dragonite Chien-Pao might hurt him a little bit. Oops, wrong spot there. Yeah, I think he's C tier. I think he makes it through day one. It's going to be hard to get through day two if he's focusing on Dragonite, although, it might be such a strong strategy that you can just play out of it even if people are countering it, bringing things like Farigiraf, which we've actually seen an uptick of. Now we see Cosmos, Jack Clark. He's had okay regional finishes, UK player. I'll go at D. Donald Smith, similar, just okay regional finishes. Luca, Italian player, I think is qualified for Worlds before, but kind of lacking the finishes, getting into a streak here. And Hari. So this is Thomas Gravul, got top 8 at OCIC and top 64 at NAIC. He has middling regional finishes. I don't think he has auto day 2, but I think he has proven himself to be a pretty strong player this season internationally, so I think he has a good chance to make it out, but it kind of fringe, could be on the lower end of C. Now we have Tyrant Francis Tai, a Philippine national champion who gets auto day 2. Don't know a lot about them, sorry about that. Gonna be C. Conkle Donk, this is probably wins the award for best username. Rishal Kar, he's an online grinder, always doing those online tournaments and doing quite well. He got top 8 at a regional. I think Jody was tweeting about how this guy just consistently thrashes him in tournaments. Might be like an 0-3 record against him, but I'm gonna go D here. I think the inconsistency is a concern for me. I think at peak there's potential here to make it out of day one, but baseline I will go with D. Zanzibar, Jeremy Parsons, kind of inconsistent regional finishes, D tier. Can't Fly. Can't Fly is Yuma Miyamoto. He got top 12 at Japan Nationals. Has kind of been publishing really strong team rentals throughout the year. I kind of expect him to get through day one. Top 12 is just barely not top 8, which would have gotten him auto day 2. And top 12 means he beat a lot of Japanese players to get there. So I think with the proliferation of Japanese players in day one, I expect him to get through that without breaking a sweat. Benster is Ben Markham, and this is another player who got a lot of their CP from London Open, so I don't think really has proven themselves that much this season, so I'll go with D tier. And now we have Wolfie VGC, Wolfie Glick, World Championship of 2016, and probably one of the more consistent Worlds finishers ever. His first Worlds got, 2011, he got top 8, lost to Ray. 2012, second place, lost to Ray. 2013, don't really remember. 2014, he laddered, he went through the LCQ, got through that, got 9th on Resistance. Yeah, 2015, I think he also missed cut on resistance. But in the most previous worlds, he had a rough run of it. I think his worst worlds ever. And I think he's really hungry to change that, kind of come back from that, have a big worlds finish. And he's been really consistent at the regional level, got top 32 at NAIC with a really innovative team. I think he's one of the most innovative team builders of all time. Yeah, I think Wolf is going to be a pretty easy SS for me. I think he's one of the favorites to win the tournament, even though he doesn't have as good peaks internationally as some of the other international players. I think everyone kind of just acknowledges he's just so absurd. Like, his peaks are crazy. So I'm going to put him SS favorite tier. Next we have Zheng, who is Shohei Kimura. He got top 4 at Japan Nationals, auto day 2 invite. So he's one of the most well-respected Japanese players, both in Japan and the grassroots scene, as well as in the West. He plays in a lot of Western online tournaments and kind of kicks our butts. So he went 4-3 at Worlds 2022. He has success at Worlds before, and I think he's a pretty good shot to go deep and cut the event. Alexander D'Andrea, this is his first season, and he's had really high peaks, but he's also had some low valleys, a little inconsistent, and I think a lot of his success came from some good early meta calls. So if he's able to make that again, I think he could make it out of day 1, but otherwise the inconsistency is kind of a concern. Sisiot, Francesco Pero, they've been inconsistent this season, but I think they have a reasonable shot to clear day 2 if they make some adjustments to their play. They've been really good in the past, so I'm going to go with a D tier here. Dandy, Thomas DeRosa, inconsistent at regionals, so we'll go D. Siri, Lucas Cirabelli. So Luca is 4 for 4 on day 2s this season. Incredible consistency. Got top 16 at EUIC and 4-3 in Worlds 2022 from day 1. So I'm not sure if this is an auto day 2, but regardless, I think it doesn't change where I rank them. I think if they're in day 1, they clear that easily based on their consistency. And I think they're honestly due for a big finish. So I'm going to go B. I think not everyone's really paying attention here, but I think Siri has a big upside on going deep this tournament. Inc. Siddharth Singhal, he got top 32 at Nats this year, some okay regionals finishes, but a top 16 national performance in 2022. Even then though, he didn't convert it to a great finish at Worlds, so I'm not quite sure if he makes it through this time considering he hasn't had as strong as a season, so I'm going to go with D tier. Rizaya Panyawat Noijan, the Thailand Nats champion, he got auto day 2. As is the trend, I don't know much else, so C tier. Liam Gilbert, I don't know a lot about his past, but I know he went, I think, undefeated at an Australian regional this year. I am going to put him at C. I think he was just really dominant at Australian Nationals, and it would have been nice to have some more data points, but based on that finish, I'm going to put him in C tier. Kenji Miura, back-to-back top cuts at Nationals in Japan, 2022 and 2023. And last year he got top 16, here he got top 6, so he got the auto invite. I think that's really hard to do. Japanese nationals notoriously inconsistent, so to be able to have that consistency there, I think speaks to his skill. I'm going to go with B tier despite knowing not a lot about him outside of that. So next we have Justin Knox, who just got top 8 at NAIC, top 32 at a regional. He had a really impressive Nats run, but I know he has a pretty busy work schedule. I believe he's a doctor. He didn't know he was going to Worlds until he got that top 8 at NAIC. So I think he might not be as practiced and not have as much time to practice as other players. So I think it's going to be a challenge in this new format to convert to day 1. But that's not really a knock against his skill or his ability, more just like busy guy. I think honestly, like, people who are unemployed have such an advantage at this World Championship, just being able to practice so much. So yeah, I'm gonna give him D just based on being an employed, productive human being. Anyways, yeah. Next we have Luka Trejgut. Got 2 top 4s at regionals this season, and the caliber of play we saw there was really impressive. He did struggle later in the season, but I think he's just fundamentally very skilled. I'm gonna go with C for Luka. And Genius is our next. We have Giovanni Piscatelli. He consistently made day 2s in Europe, but kind of struggled to convert that into bigger finishes in day 2. He was struggling against the stronger competition, so I think that's going to be an issue in the strong day 1 field. Neil Patel. Neil VGC, probably know him from YouTube, but he seemed to be inconsistent at regionals. He did have the top 8, but he did poorly at NAIC as well. He seems to practice a lot, which I think served to his benefit, like I was kind of saying about Justin, or the contrary of what I said about Justin. I think practice is king in new formats, so I do believe he has a good chance, but I think the inconsistency is worrying, and the just quality of competition at Worlds is so crazy that the NIIC finish is also a current concern for me as well. Paul Ruiz, Ralph Dude, 2018 world champion, 2017 top 4, just really consistent. He got top 8 at EUIC and top 64 at NIIC with what felt like outdated teams both times. I think he's a busy dad. He's got a newborn kid, I think. So if he finds the time to practice, I think he definitely has a chance. He'd probably be A. I think I'm going to give him B tier. I think if he comes with a team that is solid and in the meta, I think he's probably A. But I think just the volatility of it is going to put me at B. I think he's definitely capable of cutting. I think he has a strong cut chance if he puts any amount of reasonable prep into it, honestly. Next I have O, Oliver Eskelin, and I'm going to be putting Oliver in C tier. He did consistently solid at regionals. He got 4 top 32s, a top 8, but he had a poor EUIC at top 128. I think newer formats probably benefit him. I believe he got second at that international against Eric Rios with Tailwind. So Tailwind I think is strong here. I think that's going to serve to his benefit. I'm going to put him in C tier based on consistency. I probably would like to see higher peaks this season, but I think he was incredible last season, so I'm going to go with C for that. Next is Shio. Florian Henry got a lot of the CP from London Open, so you know what that means. D tier. Now we have Javier Valdez. B tier. He's a really creative team builder. Had some success at Latin American regionals. Has a Worlds cut in 2018 and is typically pretty creative and hyper offensive, which I think could serve him well early format before everyone's kind of had a chance to optimize their teams. I'm going to go with B. Now we have Yanagi T. Taka Yanagi. He got 33rd at 2022 Worlds with a dual weather team, and he got top 64 at Japan Nationals this year. I think he's an excellent player. He's in day 1 this year, but I think he makes it through day 1. Now we have Alika, who is Lendual. I think I'm going to put him at C tier here. He didn't have he didn't have anything crazy this season, but what he did have is probably just crazy consistency at regionals. 2 top 8s and 2 top 16s. He's married to Sand, which I think might not be so strong in this metagame, but notably most people won't have a lot of practice against. So I think he can tech that archetype to counter common teams and just catch people off guard. I think he's going to make it through day 1 based off his consistency. So yeah, C tier. Next we have K-Swas, Kevin Swastik. Didn't really have the consistency. A lot of CP from London Open. Now we have Pepe Giuseppe Musico. A lot here catches my eye. He got top 8 at a regional in 2022. He got top 16 at EUIC. Unfortunately, I couldn't find a lot of information on his finishes for some reason. So without a lot of data points for this season, I'm going to put him in D, but I think I could be pretty wrong about this one. I think he has a very high chance to make it into out of day 1. He could be C tier, but this is kind of fringe high C tier or fringe high D tier just because I don't know a lot about his season. So yeah. Now we have Taryn Birdie or Rayquaza. He's consistently day 2 events in Europe. The one time he went internationally to Australia, he just won the regional there. I think he's a strong team builder, strong player. I think he has a pretty strong chance to cut from day 1, especially since he plays a lot in online tournaments. He kind of, again, marries himself to a hyper offensive idea early on and just nails down games with it. So he's going to be more experienced against your team that he is against yours, and I think that serves to his advantage in day 1 and potentially day 2. Next we have Raghav, just got second at NAIC, a top 4 at OCIC, just overall very consistent on the international stage. He went 6-0 in day 1 last year to get through to day 2, so yeah, I think Raghav's in really good form right now. He wasn't quite so consistent at regionals, but with those international finishes, he kind of it seems like he just takes those more seriously, and I don't think that's going to stop at Worlds. I think he's going to have a good tournament. David Kutesh, he's one of the most creative team builders we've seen in recent years. He got top 16 at Worlds last year with Dialga Yavelta with Gyarados. Really, really uncommon combination of Pokemon. He hasn't quite had the finishes so far. I think he might have had a good national finish, but the regionals weren't quite so good. So I'm going to go C. I think he has a high upside. And he could catch people off guard and easily clear day 1 and maybe have a good shot at day 2 as well. So Next, we have Flavio Del Pidio, Pado. He got top 16 at Worlds 2022. His worst Worlds finish ever is 4-3, which is absurd. Even though he had kind of troubles converting into big finishes this year, I do think he's kind of like Narinbo, just one of the best European players. So strong. And I'm going to go with A tier for Pado. Next, we have Timbits. Olivia Maletsky has some inconsistent performances as well as being a little more green of a player, so I'm going to go with a D. Next, we have Steven Maya Gramgis. He got top 8 at Worlds in 2019, had some scattered really solid finishes at regionals this time, and I think he's kind of a sleeper to get through day one. I don't think people are really paying him any mind, but he's just like consistently been strong throughout the years, so I don't see that stopping here. Jiseok Lee, Meluka, won the first regional of Scarlet and Violet and kind of just dipped afterward. His level of dominance in that early format speaks pretty loudly to me. There's not a lot of data points, but I think I'll excuse it in this realm. I'm gonna go with a B tier or a whoops. No, that is, I think maybe B tier is more fair, but my gut's saying A tier for Meluka. Next we have Fumito. This is Andre Fumito. He had okay regional finishes. I don't know much. It was kind of hard to source info on this one, but yeah, I'm going to go with D tier for Fumito. Carson Confer, yes, former senior world champion. He's an incredible player. I think easily the best Dondozo player in the world I've seen. And he's one of those players who practices a lot with his team. You can be confident that he will have more experience in his team than you have. He's just going to be able to match up difference you through experience. And I think people are kind of counting on just out-muscling the weaker Dondozo players and not really accounting for it in team building. So I think that factor, as well as doing consistently well at regionals and nationals, Carson, I feel like we can kind of count on seeing him in cut. So I'm going to put him in A. All right, and next we have Penguin, one of the best Japanese players ever. He got first place at Worlds in 2019, top 8 Japan Nats and Worlds in 2022. So been on a hot world streak. I'm going to put him in A tier pretty confidently. I don't think he's auto day 2, but on some level, I just don't care. Like, he's consistently beaten Japanese players in international talent. He's a world champion. He qualified this year. He made it happen. I'm going to go with A for Penguin. I think he has a good chance to cut the event at least, even from day one. Jim Odry, Juan Manuel Odriozo. He's had sparse attendance and did solid at what he did attend, but I didn't have a lot of international info to go off of, so D tier. Patrick Donegan, P-Dons, kind of been inconsistent and doesn't have a great track record at Worlds despite being a veteran player, so I'm going to go with that, D tier. Chongjun Peng, he was an all-star in 22, but he didn't convert it to a strong Worlds finish despite all that, and he's had not a bad season, but not as good of a season as he did last time, so I'm going to put him in D tier. I think he's really strong though. I think he could make it out, but just based on results, I don't think it's indicative of it this time. Raikou, Ian McLaughlin, I think he got second at, no, maybe he won Juniors World in 2011, I'm not sure, but he's been consistently strong in the Juniors, Seniors, and Masters division, but he's been solid at regionals, but he kind of had a poor NAIC and kind of struggles at Worlds, so I will go with a D tier for Ian, even though he brings some frustrating teams. He could be able to get his way into through day one if he has the sauce. We have James Evans, a senior world champion in 2018, a national champion in 2022, and this season hasn't let up at all. Some of the craziest consistency we've ever seen. He got second place at one regional, top 4 at another, top 8 at 3 regionals, decent finishes at NAIC and OCIC. And I think he also finds what works for him really early, commits a lot to practice to it early in a format's life, which I think is really going to benefit him in this early format Worlds. So I think while people are scrambling to find a team, he's going to have had his for a while. And for that reason, I'm going to put James in S tier. Now we have Sejun Park, 2014 world champion, Pachirisu man. I believe he's qualified for getting 9th in Career Cup, which turns out to be the best way to qualify for Japan Nats, because I think it was top 8 who all protested the questionable tournament running in that region. So he made it, but despite that, I think he's playing in Unite Worlds. Feels like he's been putting his attention into that. Despite that, if he does decide to play, I think I'd put him in the C tier, getting through day 1. He's put a lot of time into Unite, so despite having 2 top 8 at Worlds and a World Championship, if he played even without practice, I think he'd get through day 1, but it'd be hard to say he'd get much further than that. Next we have Muscle, who is Kentaro Matsumoto. He won Japan Nationals in 2022. Went 3-4 at Worlds this year. This time he scraped into Worlds at top 64, so given that, I do think he'll probably still make it in through day 1, just through skill and having experience internationally, but I think if he went 3-4 at Worlds last year and didn't cut, I think it's less likely that he's able to make it happen in a format that he has had less success in. Next, Brian Collins. He has had some inconsistent regional finishes, so I'm going to put him in D tier here. Next we have Yuki. He got 5th in the Global Challenge, the first one, and he got top 32 at OCIC. He also figured out that Glamora Dozo was busted pretty much right after Emilio, while everyone was still kind of catching on. So I think he has a good eye for early format. If he's playing, I think he looked like he was commentating for the Japanese side stream. Not the Japanese side stream, just the Japanese language stream. I think he'd have a good chance of making it through day 1, so I'm going to go C, but like I said, I think he's commentating. CK49, Adi, you might know him for the team report videos. He puts out the recent data analytic videos that I think are really cool. Check his channel out, CK49. He's a really strong builder, has extremely solid practice partners, but he's been a little inconsistent this season. I'm going to put him at D tier. I think he does have a high upside to turn that around if he's able to play more closer to his peak, just because of the inconsistency has kind of been an issue for him this season. Now we have Bars, who is Bas van der Heijden. He went 3 for 3 on day 2s in Europe this season and went positive in all of them. I think he also did well at the London Open, which does indicate he didn't do so well at day 1 Worlds last year, but I think he's had a strong season. I think he's kind of due. I think he's just qualitatively a strong player, so I'm going to put him in the C tier, making it through. Now we have Kaylin Brown. So Cabro hit some high regionals peaks this season, but also some poor finishes, so I'm going to go with D. The inconsistency is a bit troubling. Now we have Megan Rattle. Wow, okay. So it's really interesting. She got top 8 at Worlds 2019 and 2022, both times losing to James Beck in that quarterfinals match. She's auto day 2 for Australia. She's been consistently cutting events in Australia, but not really having those peaks. Regardless, she tends to just make it happen and figure it out at Worlds. So I am going to go B for Megan, just really consistent player at Worlds. So yeah. Now we have YT. Yuya Tada, and in 2019 and 2022, Yuya was consistently cutting international tournaments. Didn't do so hot at Worlds in those years, but got top 4 at OCIC this year. Just hasn't had a lot of international presence this year, but despite that, like top 4 OCIC, I think they did well at Japan Nationals, so I'm going to put them in B tier. Let me just check their Japan Nationals finish. They got top 32. I really do expect them to get through day 1. And yeah, I'm going to put them in B tier because I do also think they have a good chance to cut based on their international success this year and in the past. Next we have Kendrick, who is Mitch Kendrick, has done decent at Aussie regionals, but no international data points, so D tier. Now you have Azulite, Alex Arand. Practices a lot and has some decent regionals finishes. Strong top 32 at nationals. I think this one's borderline C. I've been seeing some good online tournament results as well, but I think conservatively I'll go D here, but I think this is one of those where my gut's kind of saying C. Yeah, but I'm gonna go D here just to be conservative. Rolo Costa, we have Austin Acosta, a Texas local player from my region. He had a really good performance in top 8 regional with a POW Night team, but I think that's going to be targeted down pretty aggressively, and his other regional finishes weren't as hot. So some inconsistency and potentially playing, and his strength potentially being targeted. I'm going to go with a D there. Next, I'm going to go into Guillermo Castilla Diaz. He got second at Worlds in 2022. For a large portion of this season, he was suspended due to reasons I'm not going to go into right now. It's a lot to get into, but yeah, the international events he went to, he got top 32 at, so I think he's going to get day 1. I think he's going to qualify through day 1 to day 2, and we could see him in cut defending. Honestly, I think he has good potential to do that, so I'm going to be ranking him in the B tier. All right, Aaron Clemens, he got second at a regional to Justin Tang, but otherwise had some not as impressive finishes at regionals, so I'm going to put him in D tier. Brady Smith dash VGC Corner. You might have seen him on Twitter posting those pretty cool EV spreads. Also has a YouTube channel at VGC Corner. Check that team out. They're making some cool stuff. He did really well at regionals, but a bit poorly at internationals. He cut Worlds 22 and has gotten through day 1 a few times before though. So I do think I'm going to give him a C. I think he's a strong player and he's trying to do well for the brand. So yeah, we'll put C for Brady, VGC Corner. Chef, Ben Grismer. Really creative player, tends to use offbeat stuff. He went 4-3 at Worlds in 2022, but has kind of struggled in the open team sheet era. So I'm going to go with fourth. I'm going to go with D for Ben, but he could do much better than that. Next we have Nails, Nick Navarre. Nails had a really strong midseason at EUIC and regionals, but he kind of seemed to cool off as the season went on. He still had a decent NIIC though, but yeah, that mid-season cooling is kind of an issue, but I think he's one of the best builders in the game, best team builders, so I think he's definitely capable of cooking something up. I think he just fell short of the auto day 2, but I do think he has a reasonably good shot to make it through into day 2, 1, and also just potentially cut the event. So I'm gonna put him in the B tier. I think it might be a little bit of the stretch based on the weaker midseason, but I think he just has a high potential. So I'm gonna go Zelda next, Sam Pendelis. So Sam is auto day 2 in 2017. He got 2nd place at Worlds, and yeah, that was 2017. Yep. And he's done well at every event he's gone to this season. He got 2nd at one regional, 4th at another, top 16 at OCIC. So he really couldn't have done much more. Honestly, the regional he got 2nd at, he probably should have won. Got a little lucky in game 3 of the finals, a little unlucky. But he is a strong practice group that often commits to their team early, which I think is going to benefit him in this early format tournament. So with that in mind, I will go B tier for Zelda. All right, closing out almost, we have Desu, Nico Davide Cognetta. He has an auto day 2 here. He won a regional this season, has day 2'd every event he's attended this year. So incredibly consistent. I think really due for a big finish here at Worlds. So I'm gonna put him in the A tier. I think he's really talented and just well positioned to do well this tournament. Okay, and last we have PokeAlex, and I'm a little tired at this point. It's been a long time speaking a bit, but it's hard not to get excited talking about his season. He actually went crazy. He day 2'd 6 of the 6 events he attended, got top 16 at EUIC, top 4 at regionals. He finished his season with a dominant win at NEIC. Yeah, it's pretty crazy this season alone. And if we look at his previous seasons, in 2019, he got top 8 at Worlds. He had a weaker 2022 going 3 and 4, but still made day 2. I think he's fully poised to go on a very deep run this year, frankly. This could be his best Worlds finish yet, which is saying a lot. And I'm going to put Alex as the final SS tier player to potentially be a Worlds contender. Honestly, a favorite to win the event in my opinion. So it kind of works out funny where we have UB Slow as the Japanese representative, North American for Wolf, and EU for PokeAlex. Would have been cool to get a Oceania inner representative and a LATAM inner representative, but that's just the way the cookie crumbled here. So yeah, these are my favorites. I think this is a pretty comprehensive list of everyone that I'm aware of going to the tournament. I did use VGC Paste's collection that aggregated all the Worlds competitors, so big thanks to them. Again, if you weren't included or you were underranked, please don't take that as a personal insult. Take it as a challenge to really prove yourself at this event and do it for yourself. Don't do it for me or anyone else trying to evaluate you. If you enjoyed this tier list video, please subscribe to the channel, and yeah, I hope you guys enjoyed, and peace.